Senator French.
Here.
Senator Hicks.
Excused.
Senator Ide.
Here.
Senator Kolb.
Present.
Senator Larson.
Here.
Chairman Steinmetz.
Here.
4 ayes, 1 excused.
Thank you. All right, first up today is House Bill 12, Wyoming Dairy Marketing Act repeal. I'll open it up to public comment. Is there any comment on this? Anybody online?
No, Mr. Chairman,
Anybody
no one's
from
online.
any agency here? Please come up. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Justin Latham. I'm with the Wyoming Department of Agriculture Consumer Health Services. This bill that we have in front of you today, this came as part of the Regulatory Reduction Task Force. This was brought forward in 1971 in Wyoming. After that date, the federal government went ahead and created their own act. This act regulated the price of fluid milk and ensured a fair market. We have not used this act in several decades, and so that's why we brought it forth to the Regulatory Reduction Task Force. If at some point we were to need an act like this, we would have to come to the committee and come to the legislature and request to modernize the act to match the federal act a little bit better. So for those reasons, we've asked to have that act repealed. I'd stand for any questions.
Any questions? Senator Ide?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you tell us what the difference between the act that we had and the federal act that went in 1971? Were there differences in those two? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, yes, there were some slight differences, and it's how they created regions with the federal act, and the Wyoming Act only included Wyoming producers. And unfortunately, in Wyoming, we don't have now one producer that produces in the state, so it really doesn't affect the market.
Any other questions?
Quick follow-up.
Yeah, Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there is one processor, I guess you would call them, or what would you refer to them as? And so they're under the federal guidelines now. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, that is correct. We do have one processor now. They are not participating. To participate in the federal act, you have to request to be part of that. But because of the small production numbers in Wyoming, it's not a requirement, and they chose not to be part of that.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to stay for the next bill?
Yes, please. As soon as we get through with this one. What's the pleasure of the board?
Second.
Moved by Larson, Senator Larson, second by Senator Steinmetz. Any discussion? Further discussion on this? Question being called. Roll call. Anna?
House Bill 12 do pass. Senator French.
Aye.
Senator Hicks excused. Senator Ide.
Aye.
Senator Kolb.
Aye.
Senator Larson.
Aye.
Chairman Steinmetz.
Aye.
4 ayes, 1 excused. 5 ayes, 1 excused.
Thank you very much. Next up on our agenda is House Bill 13, flow-through pools exemption. Are you here to speak on that one too? All right, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is the second bill from the Regulatory Reduction Task Force. It involves flow-through pools. The reason why flow-through pools are so unique is they don't have any sanitation associated with their mechanisms for recirculation of water. That's one of the primary concerns that we look at when we do inspections on pools. So,
Yeah, a little closer. Thank you.
thank you. So, like I was mentioning, sanitation is one of the primary concerns that we look at when we go into pools. So we look at the flow of water, we look at the flow rates and circulation rates, we look at bromine and chlorine. Because flow-through pools are exempted from that, it didn't make much sense for us, we felt, to go in and inspect these. The only things that we looked at that point was life-saving equipment, safety rings and such. We felt like this was probably a better place with the local municipalities, and so therefore we requested that as part of the regulatory reduction task force that these go ahead and be removed from Department of Ag's duties.
Okay, any questions? Senator Cole?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Just a question about the volume of flow through and the flow through pool, which makes it a flow through pool, right? Do you have to guarantee that a certain amount of water exchanges per, I don't know what the criteria is, days, hours, or whatever, to make it qualify for that? And what happens if the water source doesn't flow through anymore? Does that preclude the ability to use it as a flow through pool? Those are kind of my general two questions. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
So, Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, there's no way to regulate. There's no flow meter on that aquatic facility or aquatic source that measures that flow rate. So we're not able to make that determination on how much water is required to flow through there. And there is no level that we look at when we go into those facilities. One of the things that we do look at the facilities is the amount of algae that grows in those flow-through pools. If that pool were to become stagnant, would it still be considered a flow-through? We would not consider that a flow-through if the water would go stagnant, because one of the things that you want to have happen is water flow through that, so you don't get a high microbial bacterial load in that facility or that pool of water.
Any other questions? Senator Larson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So are these normally the flow through pools like a hot pool?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that's correct. So the Saratoga Hot Springs is a good example. And another challenge to these is we don't regulate the temperature on them. The only way to regulate the temperature is to add external water in to those that is cold and try to bring the temperature down. There are some risks associated with water that's above 104 degrees Fahrenheit, but it's once again very difficult to control that when you're bringing in alluvial flow from a river or a hot spring.
Senator Hyde?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How many flow-through pools did you regulate before, and where are those? How many of them are there? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, so there's one in Saratoga Hot Springs. There's one in Thermopolis. Teton County has one, which is the Astoria Hot Springs.
Where was that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oops. Mr. Chair, I missed the third one. You said Saratoga, Thermopolis, and the third one, I missed that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, Teton County has Granite Hot Springs and Astoria Hot Springs. So there's two in Teton County that were regulated. So approximately 4 throughout the state.
Thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, anybody on the line? Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Gold, I'm sorry.
And thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Yeah, I was a little bit late to the table. I just had one question, is that it really is, if you could answer this, is why didn't your department come up with the idea of not having the need for flow-through pool regulations? I mean, is there any mechanism within your department that goes through rules that frankly are, unneeded as we're dealing with this one, that we decided that, well, you could, deal with this in the last one we had, actually. Is there any internal mechanism that is currently in place? Or is it just merely the fact that the Regulatory Reduction Task Force, I guess we had a conversation about it as we sat there, and it was decided then that you didn't have to, we didn't need this statute. Kind of the mechanism. I'm trying to see what you thought about the value of having the Regulatory Task Force as opposed to what you do internally. If you could answer that. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, we don't have anything where we actively engage on an annual basis to reevaluate the statutes that are on the books and make a determination whether those acts are needed or not needed. We did bring this forward to the Regulatory Reduction Task Force as an ask, but it's not something that we internally do on annual or biannual basis. I think it brought some value to what we do as a department and made us take a step back and reevaluate the statutes and the rules and regulations that we look at as part of the Regulatory Reduction Task Force.
Further questions? Further questions? Seeing none, thank you. Any public comment? Seeing none, anybody online?
No, Mr. Chairman, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. What's the wishes of the board? Moved by Senator Kolb, second by Senator Ide. Any comments or amendments or anything? Okay, guess call for the question.
House Bill 13 do pass. Senator French?
Aye.
Senator Hicks excused. Senator Ide?
Aye.
Senator Kolb?
Aye.
Senator Larson?
Aye.
Chairman Steinmetz?
Aye.
5 ayes, 1 excused.
Okay, thank you. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
All right, 10 minutes.
Senator French has the high mark.